There's a moment in the Gospel of Mark that haunts me every time I read it. A man with leprosy comes to Jesus. In that culture, leprosy wasn't just a disease, it was social death. Lepers were isolated, forbidden from entering cities, required to announce themselves as unclean wherever they went. They were the ultimate outsiders. The system didn't just want them healed, it wanted them erased. The man approaches Jesus and says something remarkable. If you are willing, you can make me clean. Notice what he doesn't doubt. He doesn't doubt Jesus' power. He questions his willingness. Will you even want to help someone like me? And here's what happens next. Jesus is filled with compassion. He reaches out and touches the leper. In that culture, touching a leper made you ritually unclean. You become contaminated. You be cast out too. But Jesus doesn't hesitate. He touches him and says, I am willing. Be clean. And the man is healed instantly. This moment captures something essential about who Jesus was and who God is. It's not primarily about the miracle, though the healing is real. It's about the touch. It's about someone who is untouchable being touched by the God of the universe. It's about being seen as worthy of compassion when society had deemed you worthless. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus' miracles follow this same pattern. They're not random displays of power, like a magician showing off his tricks. They're expressions of radical compassion directed at people society had abandoned. Consider the woman with the issue of blood. She'd been bleeding for 12 years, not just a physical ailment, but spiritual isolation. In Jewish law, her condition made her perpetually unclean. She couldn't participate in temple worship. She couldn't be touched. She couldn't marry. Her entire life had become one of hiding and shame. In desperation, she pushes through a crowd and touches the hem of Jesus' garment, thinking, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. It's a gesture of someone with nothing left to lose, with no power, no status, no claim on anyone's attention. But Jesus stops. In a crowd of hundreds, he stops and asks, who touched me? His disciples think he's ridiculous. People are crowding around him on all sides. But Jesus is looking for one woman in the crowd. When she comes forward, trembling, Jesus doesn't shame her or send her away. He says, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Daughter, he calls her daughter, not woman, not the bleeding woman. Daughter, in that single word, he restores her identity, her humanity, her worth. Or take the story of Bartimaeus, a blind beggar outside Jericho. Jesus is passing through town with a massive crowd around him. Bartimaeus hears it and starts shouting, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. People tell him to be quiet. He's bothering the important teacher. He's just a beggar. He doesn't matter. But Jesus stops. He asks his disciples to call the beggar over. And when Bartimaeus comes, Jesus asks him, what do you want me to do for you? Think about that question. Jesus could have healed him without asking. But he asks. He honors Bartimaeus' agency. He treats him as a person whose desires matter. And when Bartimaeus receives his sight, Jesus says, your faith has healed you. These stories reveal something that transforms how we understand God. In most religious systems, both ancient and modern, you have to earn God's favor. You have to be good enough, pure enough, worthy enough. God's attention and blessing are reserved for the deserving. But Jesus' miracles suggest something radically different. They're not rewards for the righteous. They're expressions of God's character, a character that is moved by human suffering and compelled to alleviate it. Not because people deserve it, not because they've earned it, but simply because God is love, and love moves toward the broken. What strikes me about these miracle stories is what Jesus doesn't do. He doesn't demand that people get their lives together first. He doesn't require moral perfection as a prerequisite. He doesn't say, come back when you've cleaned yourself up. He meets people exactly where they are, in their desperation, their shame, their isolation, and he offers compassion. This is revolutionary because most of us are living under a system of conditional worth. We believe that if we can just accomplish enough, look good enough, perform well enough, then we'll be worthy of love and acceptance. We're constantly monitoring ourselves, comparing ourselves to others, anxious about whether we're enough. Jesus' miracles speak directly to this anxiety. They say, your worth is not conditional on your performance. You don't have to earn the attention of God. You don't have to become someone different for God to care about your suffering. God cares right now, exactly as you are. But here's the deeper truth in these stories. The miracle is never just the healing. It's always accompanied by transformation of identity. The leper doesn't just get his physical health back. He gets his life back. He can rejoin society. The woman with the issue of blood doesn't just stop bleeding. She's called daughter and restored to community. Bartimaeus doesn't just receive sight. He follows Jesus, becoming a disciple. The miracles point to something larger: spiritual healing, restoration, the reconstruction of broken identity. And that's available to you in 2026, even without physical miracles. The spiritual reality that Jesus' healings point to is available to everyone who encounters him. Your shame can be healed. Your sense of worthlessness can be transformed. Your isolation can be ended. Your broken identity can be restored. This happens through what Jesus called being born again. It's a complete reconstitution of who you are. Not because you've become good enough, but because God sees you, loves you, and invites you into a new family, a new identity, a new way of being human. Think about what you carry. Maybe it's shame from past failures. Maybe it's the deep conviction that you're unlovable. Maybe it's a sense of alienation from God, from others, from yourself. Maybe it's the exhaustion of constantly trying to be enough. Maybe it's addiction or trauma or the weight of expectations you can't meet. Jesus' message to the leper, the bleeding woman, the blind beggar, and to you is, I see your suffering, and I want to heal it. Not because you've earned it, but because I love you, and your suffering matters to me. That's not just sentiment. That's the basis for real transformation. When you know that God sees you and loves you unconditionally, when you know that your worth isn't contingent on your performance, everything changes. The shame loses its power. The anxiety diminishes. You're free to stop pretending and start healing. Here's what's beautiful about the gospel message. Healing is available, not just in miraculous moments, but in the daily reorientation of your life around God's love. Every day, you can bring your brokenness to Jesus and say, if you are willing, you can make me whole. And his answer is always the same. I am willing. The question is, are you willing to believe it? Are you willing to let go of the belief that you have to earn your way to worthiness? Are you willing to accept that God's love is a gift, not a wage? Are you willing to be touched by compassion and let it heal you? Because that's what the miracles are really about. Not the spectacle, not the demonstration of power, the compassion. God's radical, unstoppable, unconditional compassion directed at you exactly as you are right now. May you experience that compassion today. May you know in the deepest part of your being that you are seen and loved. May you begin to believe that healing is possible for whatever is broken inside you. And may you extend that same radical compassion to others who are suffering because you know what it's like to be touched by the love of God. Reflection for today. What part of your identity or worth has been damaged by shame or rejection? Can you imagine being touched by Jesus, being restored to wholeness and community? Who in your life is an untouchable, someone society has marginalized? And how might you extend compassion to them? If you have 30 minutes to an hour to spend this morning, I want to invite you into something that might reshape how you see yourself, your struggles, and the deepest questions of your existence. We're going to talk about Jesus Christ, not as a historical figure locked behind museum glass, not as an ancient religious symbol, but as a living reality that speaks directly to the human condition we all face today in 2025 with all its complexity, speed, and loneliness. Who is Jesus, really? Not the Sunday school version we might have absorbed as children, not the sanitized portrait hanging in some church sanctuary. The actual man who walked through Judea 2,000 years ago was something far more radical, far more dangerous to the systems of power around him, and far more loving than any religious institution has ever fully captured. He was born into a world much like ours, a world of political upheaval, religious bureaucracy, poverty, and a hunger for meaning. The Roman Empire occupied Israel. The religious establishment had turned faith into a system of rules and judgment. People were tired, hungry, sick, searching for something that made sense. Then Jesus appeared. What strikes you immediately about the Gospels, the 4 accounts of his life, is that he was obsessed with the outsiders, the people who didn't fit, the tax collectors whom everyone despised, the woman at the well who had been married 5 times and was living with a man outside of wedlock, a social scandal, the leper that everyone avoided because they were afraid of contamination, the demon-possessed man living among the tombs. Again and again, he moved toward the people that society had written off. This wasn't political correctness. This wasn't performative compassion. He did something far more radical. He looked at people that the system had deemed worthless and treated them as infinitely valuable. He spoke to the Samaritan woman, a member of a people the Jews despised, with respect and tenderness. He touched the leper. He defended the woman caught in adultery when the religious leaders were ready to execute her by stoning. But here's what makes Jesus different from any other moral teacher in history. He didn't just teach about love. He claimed to be the embodiment of something cosmic. He said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." He claimed to forgive sins, something that only God, in Jewish theology, could do. He looked at his disciples and said, "Before Abraham was I am." These weren't comfortable, universally palatable statements. They were explosive. The religious establishment couldn't tolerate him because he undermined their authority. The political power couldn't tolerate him because he taught loyalty to a kingdom beyond Rome's reach. So they executed him. Crucifixion was not a quick death. It was designed to be the most humiliating, agonizing form of execution the Romans could devise. You'd be stripped naked, nailed to wood, and left to slowly suffocate while the crowd watched. It was a public spectacle of power-crushing dissent. But something happened that nobody expected. 3 days later, his followers encountered him alive. Not as a ghost, not as a collective hallucination. They touched him. He ate food. He bore the scars of crucifixion. Yet something had fundamentally changed. Death had not been able to hold him. This is the heart of Christianity, not a moral philosophy, not a political movement, not a self-help system. It's the claim that in Jesus Christ, God entered human history in a human body, lived a perfectly righteous life, died for the sins of the world, and rose from the dead, proving that death, the ultimate enemy, could be defeated. Now, what does this mean for you, sitting there in 2025, maybe skeptical, maybe curious, maybe desperate for something real? First, it means you are seen, truly seen, not by your productivity, not by your social media metrics, not by your bank account or your appearance. Jesus looked at broken people and didn't look away. He didn't offer platitudes. He offered himself. He still does. But here's where it gets challenging, and I want to be honest with you. Following Jesus isn't a self-improvement program. It's not a path to prosperity or success by worldly standards. In fact, Jesus was remarkably clear that following him would cost something. He told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Taking up your cross meant death. Jesus didn't promise comfort or financial success. He promised meaning. He promised that your life could be part of something infinitely larger than yourself. He promised that death, literal or metaphorical, was not the end. Yet millions of people throughout history have found this to be true. They've discovered that losing your life, your ego, your small self-preservation instincts, your demand to control everything, is actually the way to find true life. That sounds paradoxical, but anyone who's ever experienced it knows it's real. Consider what transformation looks like. There are people in prisons who have encountered Jesus and found forgiveness, both of themselves and of others. There are people trapped in addiction who have been set free. There are people living lives of quiet desperation in comfortable suburban homes who have finally discovered meaning. There are people in persecuted churches in closed countries who face torture and death with peace and even joy because their identity is not in this world. This isn't mass delusion. This is the testimony of billions of people across 2,000 years, from every culture, every economic background, every level of education and sophistication. Something real is happening when people encounter Jesus Christ. So what is Jesus offering you today? Not escape from reality, not a fantasy world. He's offering you truth, hard truth sometimes. He's offering you a way to see your own life with all its pain, all its failures, all its moments of shame and regret, and have it redeemed. Not erased, redeemed. The broken things are woven into a larger story that makes sense. He's offering you a love that doesn't require you to be perfect because, frankly, you're not going to become perfect in this lifetime. He sees everything about you, every selfish thought, every cruel word you've spoken, every time you've chosen yourself over others. And he loves you anyway, not in spite of your brokenness, but with full knowledge of it. He's offering you a family. The church, when it's functioning as it should be, is a community of messed up people who've been forgiven and are learning to forgive each other. It's not perfect. It's often disappointing, but it's real. It's a place where you don't have to perform or pretend. Most importantly, he's offering you hope, not in the sense of wishful thinking. Real hope, the kind that sustains you through suffering because you know that suffering is not your final chapter. That death is not the end. That God story is one of resurrection and renewal, not of entropy and decay. The question Jesus raises for each of us is simple. Will you trust me? Not, do you believe certain propositions about me? But will you orient your life around me? Will you follow me even when it costs something? Will you let me transform you? That's the invitation. It has always been open. It's open to you right now. If you're at a place where you want to say yes to that invitation, it's simpler than you might think. You don't need to say the perfect prayer or feel the perfect emotion. You need to admit that you're broken and can't fix yourself. Ask Jesus for forgiveness and invite him to take over the direction of your life. Ask him to forgive what you've done wrong. Ask him to help you become who you're meant to be. That conversation starts now. It continues for the rest of your life. It continues into eternity. And according to Jesus himself, it's the most important thing you could ever do. Because in the end, the question isn't how successful will I be or how much will I accomplish? The question is, will I know and be known by the God who made me and loves me unconditionally? Everything else flows from that. Jesus Christ is that God made human. His love is that real. His offer is that genuine. And your life could begin to change today if you accept it. May you find the courage to say yes.